Right. And there we go. Are you doing the intro?
I don't know if we should do an intro. Okay,
Cool.
so welcome to Let's Be Frank version 2.0. um, this is Let's Be Frank. We want to be really frank about everything that we talk about. We're going to be talking about business life and other things in between. And we're looking at it from the perspective of a successful entrepreneur, that's Herman, and a curious marketer, although I would also call you a curious entrepreneur. So I think it's important that everyone is curious, and you actually mentioned that in your email yesterday um,
Yeah.
about curiosity not killing the cat. um, so, yes, this is Let's Be Frank version 2.0. Okay, so where this came from, where it started was I love reading. I've always loved reading, and I I hit a wall quite a long time ago where I just couldn't get through a book. Um, and I think I was actually working for you at the time, so that was at least 3 years ago, 4 years ago, longer. How long? I don't remember. But I suddenly just couldn't get through a book, and you were recommending all these really interesting books to me, and I would buy some of them, I would borrow some of them, I would try to read them, and I just couldn't get through it. And I remember the last book that I struggled to get through was back then was *Sapiens* by Yuval Noah Harari. And I read, I think, 3 or 4 chapters. I bought it because you recommended it to me. I read about 3 or 4 chapters, and I just couldn't get any further. I hit this wall. Um, and then I didn't pick up the book for a few years, and I stopped reading completely. Um, and I had all these books building up on my bookshelf because I kept buying books that I wanted to read, and I just wouldn't open them and read them. And I think about, well, it was on the 22nd of February, I looked at my bookshelf, which is in my office. I look at it all the time. And I had heard people talking about Elon Musk and reading some of his story and how interesting it was. And I've had that Elon Musk book there at the beginning for years. I ordered it on a sale on Amazon or Take a Lot or something, and just never read it. And so I decided I was going to start reading, and I set myself a challenge. I said I'm going to read 10 books this year. Um, and I think that that was a very weak goal because now I'm on book number 12, and it's less than 3 months since I made myself the challenge. Um, so, yes, that was how it started.
That's phenomenal progress if you think about, I mean, it's not like you picked easy short books.
Some
Um,
of them are little.
some of them are little, yeah,
Yeah.
but still it takes a lot of discipline to get through 11, 12 books in, where are we, about week 14 or 15 of the year.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly which week we're in, but so were you able to at some point um, understand or figure out why you stopped reading?
I have no idea. I don't actually know why. And I think maybe I decided that it wasn't for me. Or because I struggled to get past that chapter, I thought, oh, maybe I'm not a reader. Or maybe reading isn't what I enjoy anymore. Um, I'm not sure what happened.
Okay,
Yeah,
I don't think it's important. What I do
yeah,
think is important is if you to take a break from something, whether it's reading or whatever it is. I don't think it's a bad idea.
yeah.
And sometimes that taking a break, I don't know, can be longer than a week or two and
A
turn
few
into
years.
into 2 years,
Yeah,
and that's okay. I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves in terms of, well, there's a habit that I want to
yeah,
foster or that I want to keep up, and we're not 100% clear on why. we want to do it.
Yeah. So I think one of my issues is I get really upset when I fail at something, and it's you know this about me. I'm not really good with failure, even though when we worked at Five Friday, it was one of our values that you shouldn't have the fear of failure. But I beat myself up, and I'm quite disappointed in myself when I fail at something. So part of the reason that I set myself such a low goal to read 10 books, I thought, oh, I can read a
Mm.
book a month. Um, and it's really helped me because once I achieved the 10, once I got to the 10 or I was approaching the 10, I realized that actually I can do more than that, and then I pushed the goal a bit further out, and now my goal is 20 books, but I feel like I'm going to get there and I'm going to go, okay, I can do 30 books this year. So I think for me, giving myself a something I know I can achieve, and then feeling that sense of accomplishment once I've achieved it, makes me more excited about the habit that I'm creating. So this has been the easiest habit ever because the way I decided to do it was to read one chapter a day every day, even if I don't feel like it. And I haven't missed a day since I started, and I've always read more than one chapter a day, which is why I'm getting through them so quickly.
Mm.
But it was kind of setting a low goal, giving myself the plan of how I'm going to achieve it, and then realizing that I can do more than that, which has felt really good. I'm feeling really good about it, and like I say, I haven't missed a day, and I haven't wanted to miss a day, so it's been good.
So I've been wondering, the so it's great from that point in terms of, well, I set myself a goal and can I stick to that goal? So the bigger goal was to read the 10 books, but then in order to achieve that, you decided that I'm going to read a chapter a day. So
Yeah.
that becomes like the mini goal.
Yep.
And then you start achieving this mini goal, and obviously that encourages you to keep going.
Yep.
However, I think that other than the gratification that you get from actually achieving that goal on a daily basis, and now having exceeded your overall goal, there must be something else that you are getting out of it
Knowledge.
that makes it. Do you feel
Yeah.
like you're getting knowledge out of it?
Yeah, and inspiration. So I think I've also always said to you since we first met that I want to write a book one day. Um, and I've always had every excuse in the book for why I haven't started doing it or thought about it, or and now I have. I have typed 1,000 words of my first book. So
Really?
yeah.
Wow,
So this is another goal I've
fantastic.
added to these habits that I'm forming every day. So since I started, I realized, oh, I can read a chapter a day, and I usually do it first thing in the morning. I wake up, I put my glasses on, and I read my chapter because that's the easiest time of the day that I can do it before I even get out of bed or make my coffee or anything. Um, and then throughout the day, I also have moments where I think, oh, I can quickly go read a chapter in my lunch break, or I can read a chapter after work, or so I've been
Mm.
trying to fill in my chapters wherever I can throughout my day. But because I'm doing it first thing in the morning when I wake up, the other habit I've added is journaling, which I've also never done consistently, but now I started 2 weeks ago and I haven't missed a day. So I now wake up, start my journaling, and then read my chapter. And then I've also committed to writing towards my book every day. So I've got a little notebook that's next to my bed where I'll write some thoughts about what I want to put into my book. And then when I have a chance, when I'm at my computer, I'll type up some of my thoughts and they'll start becoming something else. So I'm adding to my habits, which is Atomic Habits up there was my fifth book. And I'm doing some habit stacking, which is really making a huge difference to my whole life.
That's great. I mean, I was wondering whether Atomic Habits is one of the books that you read
Yeah.
in the process. So good. There's that confirmation about almost having a system
Yeah.
with these habits. Um, the the other question that that I wanted to ask you is: this is now that you've started adding other habits. I mean, just a rough calculation, it sounds to me like, well, these habits take up, I don't know, somewhere between 1 and 2 hours of your day. And the actual the actual amount of time is irrelevant.
Yeah.
The question is do you find that you have less time than you had before you implemented these
No.
habits?
I feel like I have more
Not.
time. I feel
Okay.
like I'm making much better use of my time, and because I'm really enjoying the reading, anytime, so when I'm running a bath in the evening, it takes however many minutes to run a bath, so I know I can fit in a few paragraphs of my book while my bath is
Yeah.
running. So there's things where I would have been just waiting or not doing anything or watching rubbish on TV, which I still do a little bit of, but not as much as I used to. Um, but I feel like I'm getting so much out of these habits that I'm forming that I want to do them whenever I can. And it feels like because I'm accomplishing something, because I'm achieving my goals, it feels like a much better use of my time, and actually that I have more time, which is weird. But it does feel like I have more time.
No, that's great to hear because I think, um, especially some of these habits are can be considered time-consuming habits, and which is why
Yeah.
I asked the question. I think a lot of people will look at a habit like that and go, "Oh, I don't have time." Um, um, and you've just described how it actually makes you feel like you have more
Yeah.
time. It's not like you have to give up other things that you've done.
Yeah.
The things that you, um, the, the time allocation, the time that you allocated in a different way. Um, the one that I heard is watch crap on TV. Sounds like the biggest sacrifice that you've had to make, which is not a
Yeah.
sacrifice at all, turns out to be.
Yes.
But also that thing about when you start enjoying these habits is you find these little pockets of time
Yeah.
where you would otherwise, I don't know, twiddle your thumbs or something like, um, and you can now utilize that.
Yeah. So I think also because my daily commitment to reading is still only a chapter a day, and
Mm,
like I say, I haven't missed a day yet, it's such a small commitment that it feels like it's not taking up a huge amount of time. It doesn't take that long to read one chapter of a book. That it hasn't been difficult to do. It's been so easy. Like I say, waking up in the morning, put my glasses on, read my one chapter, and then I get up and start my day, and it doesn't feel, in fact, it feels like a much better start to the day than snoozing my alarm 10 times,
mm.
um, having my coffee while I scroll my phone. That's the other thing, is I definitely am not spending as much time scrolling Instagram as I used to. So I think that's the other
Okay.
one that has maybe something I've given up that I didn't even realize until this moment that I'd given it up. So,
Which also means that you don't really miss it, so you didn't really get that much value out of it.
exactly. Yeah. No, I feel like my life
Okay.
has changed from, like, I can't actually describe how much better I feel since just making this one commitment to read every day. It
That's
really
phenomenal.
feels life changing.
That is fantastic to hear. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of people think to actually feel better, you have to go to the other habits, I have to, reading is not going to make me feel better, or journaling is not necessarily going to make me feel better. Because generally the feel better is associated with the exercise and eating type of habits,
Yeah.
which are which are important, but it's great to hear that you get this sense of well-being
Yeah.
from reading, um, and it's so important to, I think, the exercise of the brain
Yeah.
and of the mind. Two separate things, although the brain and the mind. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So, what is really interesting about that is that my reading habit is helping me with my healthy habits, because I know now if I commit to something every day, I can do it, I can achieve it, I can read 20 books in a year just through doing this one small thing. It's made me realize that the other habits that I need to do are as easy if I can find the thing that I can do every day to get to it. So I again, you know this about me. I've always struggled kind of with my eating habits and my exercise habits, and I've always felt like I can't commit to anything that I can do every day until now. So now I'm also, again, I set a really low goal for myself. There's a little habit tracker I've added to my phone to mark off when I've read my chapter a day, and it shows up on a calendar that you've achieved this goal, which I find really useful. And I added another one, which was to walk 5,000 steps a day, 4 days a week. So if I achieve it on any four of the days, then I've achieved it
Yeah.
for the week. Um, and I realized I kept beating that goal. So I've now increased it to 10,000 steps 4 days a week. Um, and actually, I often do more than 4 days a week, 10,000 steps. So again, by kind of giving myself the grace not to go too big, too wild, too quickly. And then when I see that it is something I can achieve, and actually maybe I've given myself too low a goal, then I realize I can reach a little bit. So it is helping me with that. So walking every day. I'm signing up to a gym tomorrow, so that's something that I'm
Okay.
also adding on. And I've cut out snacking drastically. So one of my big issues with my eating habits is I snack throughout the day, and the past 4 or 5 days, so I've added it as a line in my journal every day, uh, where I say like, what did I eat today? What have I been snacking on today? And just by reinforcing it and writing it in my journal every day, I've noticed things that I've been doing that I didn't need to be doing, and things that I haven't been doing that I could be doing. So I've just been adding little lines to my journal to help me with my other health habits. And yes, like I say, reading has changed my life. Adding reading one chapter a day has changed my whole outlook on life, um, just how I feel mentally, physically, emotionally. Um, it really has just completely changed my life in the past 2, 3 months since I started doing it.
Well, that is fantastic news.
Yeah.
It really is encouraging, I think, and it will be encouraging for a lot of people who, as I said, think that it's so difficult to make these changes and to actually kind of get to that state where you
Yeah.
start feeling the benefits of the habit. I think it's also proof that the habit that you pick, and how to how to improve your well-being doesn't have to be something out of the ordinary
Yeah.
or crazy or you know, um, cost you a lot of money or,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so many things. I really like the idea, the concept of just walking.
Yeah.
It's, it's wonderful and it's highly underrated. You
Yeah.
know, um, I do think that signing up for the gym, that's not a bad idea. But what I like about the habits that you've got now, the reading, the walking, is you can go anywhere in the world and you don't have to change your habits,
Yeah.
because that was going to be one of my questions is, have you anticipated when you are in a different environment,
Mm-hmm.
um, whether that's for work, on holiday, or whatever, what is that going to do to your habits?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's something that you've consciously thought about, but I think
Yeah.
it's quite important to know how one is going to handle those kind of situations.
So actually, I faced this right in the beginning of my reading commitment. I finished my Elon Musk book, I think, in 4 or 5 days. I started on the 22nd of February. I was going on holiday on the 28th of February. Um, and I had now established this habit of reading at least a chapter a day. I didn't want to break it, and we were about to be on a plane to Europe, so I packed these three little books here with me.
Okay.
So three really small books because I wanted to maintain what I had just gotten into and I didn't want to lose that. So I took those three little books with me, and I read them a chapter a day. I finished one of them on a plane, so the other ones I had to space
Nice.
out. um,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I maintained the habit while I was away by packing three small little books, and I came back and Atomic Habits was my first read when I got back, and I had ordered it, so it arrived the day before I left for my holiday, Atomic Habits, so I knew that that was the book I was going to be reading when I got back.
Okay.
um, so I did prepare a little bit. um, the reading one I'm not worried about when I'm away, and the walking one I'm not worried about. And I suppose my writing habit now, I just take my journal with me. Um, the exercise one will probably be a bit more difficult, and snacking. But I haven't faced that yet. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, but I think those are the type of habits. Obviously, when you go on holiday, you need to cut yourself a little bit of slack
Yes.
with that. Um, but just as long as the commitment is there to get back to that,
Yes.
when kind of you're back in the normal routine. So I know you like physical books.
I do.
You didn't think when you were going on holiday to just get a few on Kindle and you don't have to worry about the actual
No,
physical space.
it's
You see,
not the
for me,
same.
yeah, it's not the same, but there are other ways in which it's so much better for me. Since I converted from reading actual physical books to just having it on Kindle, is I always have all of my books with me.
Yeah.
And I always have all
Perfect.
my highlights and my notes with me. It's easy to refer back to those wherever I am. And I find that beneficial, if I want to look up, I don't know, I remember I read a quote or something in a specific book, or I want to share something with somebody, then it's easy for me to get that. I don't
Yeah.
have to go to a physical book.
And
So
take a
it's just one of the
photo and
things.
send the link over.
And and obviously the other thing for me is audiobooks.
Yeah.
Um, I really enjoy audiobooks because I can utilize my time driving, sitting in traffic, um, um, and actually consume something that I get benefit out of rather than just listening to the radio, which doesn't give me as much joy. Uh,
Yeah.
so I enjoy that as well. I know it's not everyone. Everyone doesn't really enjoy it, and I must say that there are times, and I haven't investigated it properly enough. Is while I'm listening to an audiobook, is to make notes or to highlight something.
Yeah.
There must be apps available that allow you to do that, which I think about it while I'm on the road and thinking, well, I would have liked to have bookmarked this or whatever. And then by the time I get to my destination, that's the last thing I think about.
Yeah. My thing with audiobooks is I find that I have to be super focused on it to hear it. And I think one of the things that people like about audiobooks is that you can do something else while you're listening to it. And I don't feel like I'd be able to do that. So I feel like I absorb the information much better if I am reading it. Because there also, if I am distracted in my mind with something while I'm reading, I realize it quite quickly and I can go back and read the paragraph again that I didn't just absorb.
Hmm.
Where with an audiobook, I always feel like it takes me a while to realize I wasn't listening. And then I'll
Okay.
suddenly go, oh, I haven't listened to the last 15 minutes and have to go back and listen again. Um, that said, I drive to London quite a lot. So since I've moved to the UK, I don't spend a lot of time in my car. I don't drive anywhere. Sometimes my car can sit in the driveway for 2 weeks before I need it to go to the grocery store or something, which is
Yeah.
5 minutes down the road, 5 minutes back. So I don't listen to anything in the car. But I do travel to London fairly often, which is a 3 or 4 hour drive. And I'm thinking maybe next time I do that trip, I should put an audiobook or a 3 hour podcast on, um,
Yeah.
and see if I can actually absorb it like that.
It works for me driving on the open road, especially. It really, I don't find myself too distracted
Yeah.
that I kind of lose, you know, what what the book is about or what's being said. Yeah, it's something worth trying.
Do you listen to fiction or non-fiction?
The last fiction that I read, listened to the audio version of, was the Doug Casey books. Um,
Excellent.
yeah, yeah. So
That's
that's the
next on
last.
my list.
That's next on your list. Spoiler alert: fiction as close to reality as you can get, especially the second and the third one.
Yeah.
And they're busy working on the fourth one.
Okay. Well, it's good to
And
know that I've got something to look forward to.
yes, somebody asked him in a podcast the other day, when is it going to be out? And he said that one of the problems they have is that it's supposed to be fiction, but reality keep on catching up. So they have to make changes. What they
Yeah.
thought was very fictional kind
Yeah.
of turns out to be reality. Anyway, so yeah, that was the last fiction that I read.
Yeah.
I tend to stick to the non-fiction stuff. Biographies is something that starting to interest me more and more.
Yeah.
There's actually a wonderful podcast um, on the subject, which I really enjoy. Um, which I'll share the link with you, because I don't think I can get through as many books as this guy. So he reads a biography and then he'll come and do a podcast about it.
Okay.
Um, it, it I've learned so much in terms of people's stories. People whose names I didn't know and never would have thought that this is something worth reading. So what I enjoy about that is he summarizes that in an hour or an hour and a half
Yeah.
podcast, and I feel like I've learned quite a bit
About that
through
person.
that.
Yeah.
But there are some biographies that I've got earmarked that I want to get into, some historical figures. I never thought that I would be that interested
Same.
in. I think it's because more and more information becomes available, and not not just the usual historical facts about certain figures. Um, Not that I think these things weren't known, but it was just considered, well, let's not put that in the book. Whereas now, for example, there was something, I haven't read the book yet, but there's a book that was recently released that talks a hell of a lot about the drug use of the Nazis in the Second World War,
Yeah.
which is something that, as far as my knowledge was never included in well, certainly not in the history books that we
Yeah.
were taught at school. So things like that fascinate me because, something that was not necessarily unknown, but it was considered not polite or correct or whatever the term is, to talk about it.
Yeah.
But what a massive influence that could have had on the history and had on the history of the world, where I think we should be more aware of these kind of things. Anyway, so that's a kind of thing that interests me, um, understanding a bit more.
Cool.
I'll update you when I start reading something of interest.
I was going to say, I also didn't think I would be that interested in biographies, and I've really enjoyed the biographies that I've read so far. So I read that Elon Musk one. I read Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In, which had been sitting on my bookshelf for a very long time. I didn't feel like it was life changing for me, but it was interesting to hear what her experiences were in business and And then the one that was really, really good that I've just read is Shoe Dog, the Nike Full Night Shoe Dog. It was so interesting, and one thing I realized after I read it was not once in the book is "just do it" mentioned. Because I had written in my
Okay.
journal just before I started reading it, there was a quote that was basically "just do it," and I wrote "just do it" next to it, and then I started reading Shoe Dog, and I thought, when I look back, I was like, oh, they didn't mention "just do it" once in Shoe Dog. It's really interesting. His story is fascinating, and yeah, I enjoyed that a lot. But it's not very Nike focused. It's very full night focused, which
Full
is
night
what's
focus.
really
Yeah.
interesting about it. And then I've got Ariana Huffington, Steve Jobs,
Okay.
and a comedian, Jennifer Saunders, on my shelf coming up. So I'm looking forward to those books
Nice.
too. But I'm not being very specific about what books I'm reading. I'm just kind of reading. I've been asking people for recommendations and then adding those to my list, and then also just something that maybe I've thought about before or thought might be interesting to read, or books that I already had on my bookshelf. So there's not really a structure to what I'm reading. I'm just trying to absorb everything I can at the moment. And it's
I
fun.
think that's a great strategy. I don't
Yeah.
think you should have a preset structure or set of. It's wonderful, the idea of asking other people for recommendations.
Yeah.
I always find that you get a little bit of a glimpse into the soul of somebody after they recommended a book,
Yeah.
and you read it and you kind of see what. Um, so that's a great strategy. I like the diversity in the type of books that you read.
Yeah, so I think that's the other thing is I want to be influenced by other people, and especially if it's someone that I admire or I have some kind of interest in, or I think that they're a little bit inspirational. Um, I'm making a point to ask those people for a book that maybe changed their life or they think might change mine. And then I'm making a little note of those and I'm ordering them on my next Amazon order and adding them to my list. So I've got a couple of the recommendations up there now. Well, actually, the one I'm reading right now is a recommendation from someone I met randomly, so the Chimp Paradox. And he said that changed his life and it'll probably change mine. So that was why I added that one. And then I've got Speculator, which was your recommendation, which is my next
Mm.
read. And I've got The Happiness Hypothesis up there, which was a recommendation from Richard Mulholland from Missing Link. So I'm adding different people's recommendations as I go along.
Just remind me again, the happiness hypothesis. Who's the author?
Jonathan Haidt,
Oh,
H
yeah,
A
yeah,
I
yeah,
D
yeah.
T.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, I'm trying to get as much information as possible. I don't know if I'm going to remember everything I read, but there are some interesting contrasts between some of the books. So, The Untethered Soul, which is a very spiritual book, spoke about Tao philosophy, which I hadn't heard of before. And then Shoe Dog, he talks about Tao principles and philosophy, which I read straight afterwards, which is a completely different book, but has some kind of connection. And now The Chimp Paradox, which I'm reading now, also about the mind. And it's Untethered Soul was looking at your mind from a spiritual perspective. This is looking at the mind from a performance perspective, but there's obviously all these similarities and things. It's fascinating. I'm really loving this journey. I can't say it enough. Everyone should go and read a chapter a day.
absolutely. What I also like about what you just said is that you can pick out of each of these books and the angles that they come from, and take out of it what is applicable to you at this point in your life and in your journey, etc.
Yeah,
If you reread the same book in 5 years' time or whatever, I'm sure you'll get something different from it.
yeah,
And I think that that's what books are meant to give us.
yeah. Well, you
It-
recommended the Rick Rubin. Um,
yeah.
what's the book called?
Um,
Create
it's
art. Create
it,
something about creation and art.
it's. I
The
was
art
going
of
to say
creation.
it doesn't sound right.
It doesn't sound right.
um,
But
um,
the point is, while you look for the
yeah, yeah.
title, is you recommended that to me and a podcast of him and Huberman, I think.
Yes, Andrew
And
Huberman.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I it's a 3 hour podcast. So I didn't watch the whole thing, but I listened to little bits of it. And then I was really fascinated with Rick Rubin, and he came up in my YouTube, and I saw there was a Malcolm Gladwell podcast with him, so I listened to that a little bit, and it was just really interesting. And someone had commented on it on the YouTube video that they're listening to all of these different podcasters interviewing Rick Rubin about his book, and how each person who read his book focuses on something different, and they look at it and they interview him from a different angle. And I also just think that that's so interesting, that the exact same book read by different people will have a different effect on them, and they'll take something different from it. So that's why I also like talking about books with someone who's read them. So talking with you
Yeah.
about something you read and I've read. Maybe we need to start a book club.
It's called The Creative Act, the Rick
There we
Rubin
go.
book.
There we go. The
Um,
creative act.
I also recommend listening to Rick Rubin's own podcast, which is called, oh my word. Anyway, I particularly enjoyed the episodes that he did with John Frusciante from the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Cool.
Like three different, 3 episodes of an hour and a half or 2 hours each, where they just speak about. I think John Frusciante is a brilliant guitarist, a musician, and so on. And I just really like the casual, relaxed way that that they chatted about this. So definitely something, if you, I don't know, maybe go on one of your walks and you
Yeah.
want to listen to something and so on, light-hearted listening. Um,
I feel like
Broken Record. The show's
Broken
called
Record.
Broken Record.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what oh, maybe it was on. Maybe Malcolm Gladwell was on Rick Rubin's podcast, because I think that's where I saw it. I don't know,
Well,
but
they maybe
yeah,
published. Yeah, they
yeah.
maybe published it on his own podcast as well. Yeah.
I feel like we could talk forever about books and podcasts and interesting people, and I don't know how to draw this to a close. But what we started talking about was habits and forming a reading habit. And it's just so interesting that something so simple, reading one chapter a day, and for me, it has changed my life. And I only started that on 22nd of February this year. Um, I have a completely different outlook on what is achievable, what I'm capable of doing, um, and I'm really focusing on the things that will make me better, mind, body, and soul. Um, so yeah, I think everyone should try. Give yourself a really small goal. If you can't read a chapter a day, read a paragraph a day. If you can't read a paragraph a day, read a line a day, and you'll very quickly surprise yourself at what you actually are capable of.
That's fantastic. I look forward to us discussing your book on a future Let's Be Frank.
I'm only a
That's
thousand
really
words in.
exciting.
Yeah,
Only 1,000 words in.
yeah,
Well, um, I'd like to check in with you on a future episode about how your writing habit is developing.
yeah,
Because like anything else, you're going to start off a bit slower, um, and then once you
yeah,
you build a bit more confidence, etc.
yeah. I was going to
So I'd
go
like
into
to,
it now, but I don't think we have time.
yeah, you know what? Let's chat about that at another time because I'm going to have 100 questions about that.
Cool.
I'll also I'll also send something your way to read on that subject, which is a
Awesome.
very quick read.
Yeah,
But yeah, let's chat about this, about the writing, the process, the as I say, I have lots of questions about that. Maybe because I've also felt that there's a book inside me somewhere, and I
everyone
just
has one.
don't. Yes, and I just don't have a clue where and how to start.
Yeah,
So that'll be
maybe. Yeah,
very selfish in that request in terms of
maybe
sharing
that
your
could be
experiences. Yeah,
our next episode.
done, done.
Cool. Well, until next time, this has been really fun. I feel like there's a lot more to talk about. Would love to engage with anyone who has thoughts on this topic or questions about it. So please feel free to leave us a comment. I will personally reply to everyone. I'm sure Herman will too. So yeah, it's been great. Thank you.
Thanks, Ali.